Hey folks, really cool video to share today, man. I get to fly over what remains of the Rancho Seco nuclear power plant. The water cooling towers remain, as you can see here in this photo, and there's a banner in the upper right of the frame where you can click if you want to buy this image or see my other images. Click on that link. But this is really cool, man. Check this out. Before we do the walkthrough and the flyover and the voiceover of the video, I want to share with you a couple things I had to make double sure of before I flew over these towers. They're 425 feet AGL, 445 feet main sea level. Okay, you know you're not supposed to fly your drone anything over 400 feet AGL unless you're 400 foot around an obstacle. Then you can fly 400 foot over the obstacle as long as you're not going into as long as you're not going into controlled airspace. So these being 445 feet, or actually 425 feet AGL, I was in Class E airspace, but there was the fuzzy magenta line and the hard magenta line. So the actual altitude for the airspace, instead of beginning at 1200, begin at 700. But I'm okay because I still wasn't going to fly into, I only flew at like 516 feet AGL, so I was well underneath the ceiling for the 700 foot in the Class C airspace. So you want to double check flying over these kinds of things, because this is really a tall structure, and you can tell by looking at this, man. This is just really was an incredible time. I flew the Phantom 4 Pro V2.0. I really like the drone a lot. There are some quirks that it has that I'm trying to decide if it's just me and I don't understand the tech or whatever. But look at these cooling towers. I got there in the early morning. It was about 7:30 about 0800 actually, when I actually got the props put on the Phantom and got everything dialed in and took off. So we had some really dramatic lighting on this scene, and some really varied lighting too, because there was clouds and then there was pockets of sun, and then I flew around both sides of the tower, so there was some silhouetting, but it just, look at that nice golden morning light out there in California. Man, it was just really, really beautiful. And this power plant, it was a nuclear power plant. It was built, I think, in the 70s. This is not a history lesson on it because I'll fail, but I just really wanted to show you something cool that I flew over with the Phantom 4, and talk a little bit about the Phantom 4, and talk a little bit about also the things that went into consideration when I flew over this structure. There's a few things I had to consider, and that being said, the airspace was the biggest one of those concerns. I knew I could go and fly around these water cooling towers, but if I wanted to fly over, I had to know what the height of them were. And you can see these on your sectional, or I could see these on my sectional chart that I looked at on Skyfactor, for the area that I live in, and I could see what the altitudes or the heights were of these obstacles, because they're listed right there. And actually on the Skyfactor it says cooling towers, so it's pretty, it narrows it right down, because there's no other cooling towers anywhere around. But so once I determined what the heights were of these cooling towers, then I knew by looking at the airspace and realizing it was in Class E Echo airspace that I could fly over this, because the ceiling, for, like I said in the beginning of the video, it's 1,200 feet, unless you've got that blurry magenta and that solid magenta line. Well, I'm inside the blurry magenta line, that soft magenta line, so that begins at 700. And so I was still able to fly these and clear these without being any risk. I mean, you still want to watch out for manned aircraft, VFR, little aircraft out there, but and that's one thing it brings up on the Phantom 4 also. There is no sky sense. There is no, like in my Mavic Air 2, it shows me where there's manned aircraft. The Phantom 4 Pro V2 doesn't have that. I don't see that on there anywhere. So that's something to consider too. You really got to be, if you're going back and forth between both drones and you're using one, you got to keep in mind that when you're using the Phantom, there's some features that it doesn't have, even though it's a re-release and it's a newer version of the Phantom 4 Pro. I don't know why they didn't put that on there, but so that's something to be mindful of, and keep a lookout. But look at this view. What an incredible! Imagine walking around the rim of that cooling tower. That was your job, to climb up there and walk around the rim of that. Now, what's really neat about these cooling towers too is until I was able to look at one in other videos, I didn't realize that these were hollow. They're all the way, you could see all the way from the top to the ground. The water is inside the walls, so that's really, really pretty neat. And I imagine it get really pretty heavy too. And the reason these towers still remain is because it's just too expensive to take them down. And so they just remain there. And there is a recreational facility out here too. But the whole area now is full of those solar panels that you see. I mean, gosh, it's just like endless sea of shiny reflective solar panels aimed up at the sky. It's pretty cool. But not near as cool to look at as the cooling towers of a former nuclear power plant. There was some really cool history behind this power plant. You can Google and YouTube and check it all out. Maybe I'll put a link in the description, but here's an original building too from the original power plant, what remains. And if flying over here, I went in from the backside. It was about a 1,000-foot radius that I planned my flight from, so I still maintain visual line of sight, but there's no real way to get on the facility and fly from the facility. I was out on public road, and there wasn't anybody I was flying over the top of, no moving vehicles, no anything like that. So I picked a pretty good spot where I could maintain visual line of sight and perform the flight safely. And matter of fact, some of the people that were working at this place on the solar panels that were off to the side of where I was flying could see me because I wear a yellow reflective vest, and they were yelling at me, "Hey, there's a fox in the field." And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, there's a fox." I'm like, "Cool." And I looked, and sure enough, there was a white fox come out of the tall grass. How cool! And I didn't have my SLR with me, so missed out on that opportunity. But at any rate, that would have been really cool. But look at this ladder, man. Look at that ladder. Imagine you had to climb that thing all the way to the top. Man, I quit, That's overtime. That's definitely a long trip up that ladder. And there's various communication, satellite, or radar on that tower that you can see there. And all those little individual panels, it doesn't look like it's one solid piece like a tank would be, but just its individual panels. It's really pretty cool. This was a beautiful morning also out here in, Herald, California. I say Rancho Seco. I don't know if it's Rancho Seco or it's the name of the town is Herald anyway. But these are just really, really tall, really, really pretty. And I'm not going to lie, you get a little bit nervous flying up that high. You can see the drone, but at the same time, that, man, you're flying next to these awesome mega structures that, when you sit back and you think about it and realize that this entire facility that was built here, all the water and plutonium and all the things that they needed to create energy, the sun does it by itself every second of every day. It does it by itself. So that's really incredible when you sit and think about that. But here we are pulling away from the scene. Appreciate you guys watching. Take care. Like and subscribe to the channel. I really hope you like this video. It really is incredible. Like I said, like and subscribe. Check out my website, insightfulimagery.com, and stay tuned for the next video, guys. Take care.